Yo, what up, guys? Travic here, and today I want to talk about the monk. Playing before you're going to see the typical monk. Lots of cool explosions, really aggressively fast movement speeds, and well, today I want to talk about some of the things that I've changed. Now, if you're watching this clip and you see right away that my monk is moving an absolute metric ton faster, it has a very large AoE, and a lot of things have come together and changed. Very recently, we've managed to change some of the gear up, do a couple of things with the character, and overall just bring it to the absolute next level of scaling. This character has started from the absolute bottom where we cleared the campaign as a monk playing a lightning based monk. We've slowly converted it into a cold based monk that was non-crit, converted it into a crit based monk, converted it then to a double herald explosion monk, then scaled the heralds even further, and then double, tripled, quadrupled our damage every step of the way, showcasing to you guys the process. Now, my monk has undergone so many different variations, and I've been recording these videos and setting the stage for it. And today, just like every other, we are presenting to you a new level of just, finding the words to explain what is even going on is kind of crazy. Now, everyone's familiar with the stat stacking gemling. Everybody knows that you can stat stack on gemling. Everybody's heard of the Pillar of the Cage Gods. And if you haven't, well, today we're going to talk about just that. Playing before you right now, my monk is doing a tier 4 breach. Its attack speed is insane. It is playing Tempest Flurry. It has its bell. It has a whopping 16,000 health. And this character is doing everything that you would expect a stat stacking character to do. It's fast, it's quick, it's snappy, it clears all the content in the game. There's not really a whole care or concern or worry. There are some map modifiers that will brick the character, but overall the character in itself is kind of insane. Now we're gonna go right into this boss fight and you're gonna see right away just what it looks like. In this showcase, we are not gonna be using any Eye of Winter. We're not gonna be doing any of the cheese. We're just gonna be showing off the raw, pure damage of what stat stacking monk can do and how it works. We have our stacks of charged staff, we have our heralds going, and we're going to drop the bell, and we're just going to start obliterating the boss. You're going to notice the character has its weaknesses. It does get chilled. It does get frozen. We are hoping that the charms beneath my face do kick in. But, you know, outside of that, you see just the absolute metric raw damage this character can do without using Eye of Winter shenanigans and other crazy things. Now, this entire clip was roughly 3 minutes from the start of the tier 4 fights, killing the boss, and it goes really, really, really well. Now, this character was relatively easy to put together. It wasn't too crazy expensive, but I am going to put a disclaimer. So there's going to be a big section. If you skip this section and you yell at me in the comments, I'm going to be sad face panda boy hours. Now, disclaimer 1. Stat stacking is a very big target for nerfs. There is a good strong chance this might get nerfed. This is an insanely powerful build that relies on using the Hand of Wisdom in action, Pillar of the Cage God, and other small mechanics coming together to give it an absolute metric ton of damage. I am at a 10th of what my damage should be. We can easily double or triple our damage, no problem, with more upgrades. But currently, with the outright basic, we are just completely flying. So I want to put that out there. If you choose to go down this route and you choose to play stat stacking, there is a opportunity or possibility that you will wake up tomorrow or the next day or a week from now and it will be nerfed into the ground. I cannot guarantee its safety. That is a thing that might happen where it might indeed get nerfed. So if you choose to continue down this road, let's talk about it. First and foremost, stat stacking can get very expensive very quick. Today, we're going to be showcasing a variant of the build that does not use the unique chest and does not use Astromentus, is fairly budget, but is still relatively expensive. When I say it's fairly budget, it doesn't use a 150 div amulet. It doesn't use a 60 div body armor. It still does use a 20-30 div belt, and it still uses a couple things that are relatively expensive, but you don't have to buy a 160 div amulet to really get it going. Essentially what the build is doing is it is scaling your area of effect, it is scaling your attack speed, and it is scaling your weapon damage using Pillar of the Cage God. Every 5 points of int, dex, and strength give you more stats, and on the gloves, every 25 points of dex and every 10 points of int give you more stats, one being more speed and one giving you more damage. Knowing this, we really want to cater our skills and our stats to work around these two things. We want an even number of strength and number of dex equal to 25, and we want an even number of intelligence to kind of round out our stats. Currently, I'd like to get 5 more dex, I'd like to lose about 2 strength, and I'd like to get about 7 more int to really buffer my stats, but that'll all be fixed, that'll all be changed when I upgrade some gear that's coming in the future. I wanted to throw in one more little last thing to put in for the disclaimer. This build is not my own. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God. The build was sent to me by you. And essentially what happened was you guys sent me a video of an invoker stat stacker. Pretty much this in the guy's video, and everything was in Korean, and you guys were nice enough to help me get it translated and double triple check Google Translate because I can't read Korean. And you guys have been great. I'm actually gonna include this down below for you guys. I then from there tried to play it, messed it up really bad, didn't know what I was doing. I turned to my buddy GameWilliams, huge shout out to Will. Will, you are awesome. I can't thank you enough. Will then took this, he said this looked awesome, and he wanted to try to put it together. Will then went out and he put it together. He got it to work. He figured out all the small changes, all the things to make Invoker feel good, and he walked me through it. If it wasn't for Will and him spending a lot of time working with me, you can see actually Will has some major changes that you'll see very different between my tree and his tree. If it wasn't for Will and him helping me, this video today would not exist. So thank you, Will. I really appreciate it. But for now, let's get into the rest of the character. To get this build started, you need a couple of things. One, you need to understand that you're going to go stat stacking and it's going to be expensive. This is not a cheap route or a cheap route. There are people who do it on the cheap. I have tested it on the cheap. It does not feel good on the cheap. Things will work together very well. For example, one ring with ingenuity adds about 100,000 DPS. If I take off my belt, I lose about 100,000 DPS. If I take off my gloves, I lose almost all of my damage. Everything works together, and you need everything for it to come together to properly function and survive. If you don't have like ingenuity, your damage is going to feel bad. If you don't have stats, your damage is going to feel bad. To make the swap from the current monk that you've seen me playing to stat stacker, I had to do 4 things. One, I had to buy new rings. So I bought 2 new rings. Those rings had to give me both stats and resistances to cover my resistances. So we got 2 rings there. So that's number 1. Number 2, I had to retool all of my gear. We'll go over everything step by step to fill out and cap all of my resistances. 3, I had to buy 2 unique jewels, which we'll talk about, that go here and here. And 4, I had to change up my entire skill tree, as you see. But let's start from the beginning and work our way up. First and foremost, as I mentioned, this build works and survives and does everything it needs to do because Pillar of the Cage God. Every 5 points of int, every 5 points of dex, and every 5 points of strength give us both area effect, attack speed, and weapon damage. That's what gives us this beautiful movement using Tempest Flurry. Our gloves give us an insane amount of attack speed and flat lightning damage. If I take off the gloves, we lose a little bit of attack speed, but we're still relatively fast and snappy. You can see right away. Both of these are very nice. If you get a good corrupted pair of gloves, you're really happy. If you don't, you just want the base pair of gloves. I currently do not have a rune in my gloves. I do not need to put a rune in my gloves. I'm going to be changing up a couple of things when I get some money. Fill your gloves with what you need, ideally an all res jewel or rarity, depending on where you're at in terms of gearing. Your weapon, ideally you want soul cores that are going to give you these soul cores here. They're going to give you attack speed. They're really, really nice. My weapon is currently corrupted with increased weapon damage per strength. Very beautiful corruption. You can also get a copy of the weapon. I believe I have one. They're relatively cheap with 3 sockets in it, and put 3 attack speed soul cores in it. Attack speed on the base weapon is very, very, very important. And I could show you right here with Tempest Flurry, my attack speed 9.1. If I put in one that doesn't have any base attack speed, you see the amount of attack speed just drops drastically from 9.1 to 8.3. And you can even see he's a little bit slower while moving around the map. Base attack speed on the weapon is insanely important. If your attacks feel slow, make sure that you have a good weapon. We talked about rings. Rings need a couple of things. You see my rings, if I hold alt, they have really high int, really high strength, and all res. These are really, really, really important because if I take my rings off, you see that my resistances are pretty cooked. One of these rings plus ingenuity literally starts to fix all of my res, and then if I do another ring, my res gets completely fixed. Ingenuity plus stats on the ring is very massive. These rings also give you a metric ton of damage. You can see I have flat damage on my ring, flat being 20 to 33 fire. If I take this off, I lose a whole lot of damage. We can also see too in my stats, I have 43 strength and 46 int. You could do the math. It is almost 100 of each because of ingenuity, and ingenuity doubling or more than 50% of the modifiers on each of the rings. So very, very, very important. And we could see the same thing with this ring here. It just removes so much base stats that even if I take these 2 rings off, we go down to 136. And when I put them back on, my strength just skyrockets to the moon to 322. Base stats on your ring are going to be very important. Flat damage on your ring is going to be very important. And all resistance on your ring is going to be very, very, very important. The rest of the gear is pretty straightforward. I took a helmet with a high amount of energy shield. I've had this conversation a lot. Flat energy shield on your helmet, every single point is a lot. Every single point is a lot. So you really want a helmet with high energy shield. Really good example. I have 23 energy shield on my gloves. Look at my energy shield. If I take off my gloves, I lose 100 health, roughly 100 and change, and 23 energy shield. That tells you how much energy shield impacts everything. If I take off my helmet, I lose 2,000 health. 348 energy shield is a lot. If you come to me and say that your energy shield's low and not scaling, and you show me a helmet with 190 energy shield, I'm going to tell you that it's bad, go fix it. If you show me a helmet with 275, I'm going to tell you it's bad, go fix it. The more energy shield, the better. Currently, in this iteration of the build, my helmet fixes a lot of my resistances. I do need to change the helmet. I don't need as much fire resistance as you need. I will fix my gear soon. I just got the build up and running. It works great, and I'm really happy with it. My amulet, the same thing as my other monk. A ton of energy shield, crit bonus damage, all attributes, and fire resistance. Once again, my fire resistance is to the moon. I could probably do with a different amulet, but I'm going to be changing things shortly, and I don't want to be spending money now when I'm going to be changing up a couple of things in the future to bring this build to the next level. I need like 100 divs, and then I'm going to worry about changing things. So once I get about 100 divs, we're going to start changing things again. My rings we talked about, my belt, ingenuity. My belt I got corrupted with 10 int on it. Absolute beautiful belt. You don't need the 10 int, but you do want a really high rolled ingenuity. It makes all the difference in the world. My boots, same thing. Good movement speed, energy shield, int, resistances. I really probably don't need the energy shield. I could probably just hold right click and move faster than I can walk anyways. So eventually I'm going to change out my boots to get more energy shield just so I have more life. Or maybe depending on where I get my resistances in other spots, I might change out my boots to give me more stats. Kind of really depends on the changes that I make after I farm all the currency to make the next set of upgrades. My body armor, same exact thing. Just tons and tons of energy shield, a little bit of int, and resistances to cover me all around. You see I went overboard on fire resistance, a little embarrassing, but when I put the gear together, it's just kind of where I was and where I was at. And it's a combination of my old monk's gear plus my new monk's gear. As I mentioned, I only put on 2 rings and put on the Pillar of the Cage God, changed my tree, and put on 2 unique gems, and everything worked out great. You notice too, we do have 2 charms. The 2 charms are literally because of the tree. We took the Hunter's Talisman. Big shout out to my friend GameWilliams. He did indeed tell me that the 2 charms to be using is a stone charm and a thawing charm to deal with being stunned and frozen. Very impactful, very huge shout outs to Will. The rest of the build goes as follows. None of the gem links have changed. We are in the process of updating and making everything nice. We're still using Meditate. We now have Tempest Flurry. Same thing, Lightning Mastery, Inspiration, Rage Support, Martial Tempo, and Primal Armaments. Some people like using Crescendo instead of Lightning Mastery. I'm not a big fan of the second attack at the end. I like Lightning Mastery a lot. Our Charge Staff has Overcharge, Shock Siphon, Persistence, and Ambush now for critting against full life. Since we are no longer at that beautiful 90% crit, we did have to lose a little bit of crit to make the swap. We are going to fix our crit when we fix our gear. We will get our crit back up, but we need to fix our gear so we can change up some things. I'm not actually sure how good this is. I'm actually thinking about dropping this and replacing it with something else. I'm not really too sure what I want to replace it yet, but if you guys have any good ideas, I'm all for it. Our Tempest Bell, we have Leverage, Super Critical, Overabundance, and Close Combat. Very beautiful. Tempest Bell does a lot of damage. You saw it completely nuke down the boss, no problem. We still have Blink with Ingenuity so that we can get that beautiful blinking ability every so often. It's quite lovely to be able to blink in and out of combat. I am actually considering dropping Blink and going back to Dodge Roll and doing other stuff with the Spirit, but I need to experiment a little bit more. Combat Frenzy with Perfusion so that we can generate our beautiful charges. Our Herald of Ice, we have Magnified Effect, Lightning Infusion, Conduction, Cold Mastery, and now Innervate to gain more lightning damage when we shock an enemy. We have Herald of Thunder, which we're eventually going to 6-link as well, with Glacian, Cold Infusion, Ice Bite, and Electrocute. We now have Mana Remnants in the build, as since we have very little energy shield or very little evasion, we have extremely little evasion, we put Mana Remnants in to help us sustain our mana. Ideally, we wouldn't use a level 21 Tempest Flurry. We use like a level 10, but I really don't want to link a level 10 one, so I'm being really stubborn and pressing my Mana Flask plus using Mana Remnants. You really want to use a low level Tempest Flurry so you don't have mana problems. And then lastly, I was being really lazy and doing a bunch of simulacrums, and I didn't want to die while doing a bunch of sim stuff, so I put in Grim Feast for a little bit of extra buffer. You don't need to use Grim Feast. You can actually replace Grim Feast. If I'm not being lazy and I want to like pay more attention, I will replace Grim Feast with Charge Infusion and kind of go from there. But that's overall the skills. The no evasion is not that big of a deal. I know some people are like big on evasion. I'm not really too worried about it. Having a whole 16,000 health is quite nice. Something to note with meditate, when I swap to my meditate setup and I have on this and this, my energy shield goes up to 17. When I swap back down, my energy shield goes down. Meditate overcaps the amount of energy shield of your current thing. It doesn't take longer to do the meditate. It's always double. It's the same amount of time. I've tested lowering my energy shield and raising my energy shield. As long as you have a high amount of energy shield recharge rate, you will be fine. Our passive tree, very interesting, to say the least. Our ascendancy nodes haven't changed. Still lead me through grace to give us all the spirit. Meditate that we channel to gain overflow of our energy shield. I am the blizzard for cold damage. And sunder my enemies because 50% crit when you hit 1,000,000 times a second is quite a lot of crit. And quite a lot of ignore. From here, we're taking critical bonus damage. We're coming up here and we're taking all kinds of attributes and we're taking all kinds of energy shield where we can afford it. Now you'll notice these points here. These are for my weapon swap. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just talk about the main path. We take a bunch of int nodes, a bunch of strength, and a bunch of dex nodes all along the path everywhere to meet our stat requirements. We have a bunch of critical strike bonus damage here and critical strike chance. We come up here to grab resonance so that we can generate our frenzy charges. We have a jewel here that gives us critical strike chance and energy shield. You don't need this time lost jewel. It's something I found. You don't need it. You can literally put in a jewel like this that gives you energy shield and critical strike chance, and it would be just as strong. You don't need this. Searching for these jewels on trade is a huge pain in the butt. You don't need these. The rest of the nodes here, we get some dex here, we get some int here, we get a whole bunch of crit, we get attack speed up here, and a bunch of attack speed, a little bit of energy shield from this that we would get if we put in a regular jewel. All is good. Up here, another jewel socket, same thing, energy shield, critical strike chance, more crit over here, chaos inoculation to give us that one beautiful life, making us chaos immune, bleed immune, and poison immune. Because poison damage is chaos damage, but not all chaos damage is poison damage. So we're poison immune, bleed immune because they can't hit our life total, and we are chaos immune. Another jewel, like I said, critical strike chance and spells. We come up here for flat 25 int and 60% energy shield. Moving down the tree over here, we take the same nodes here for critical strike bonus with our quarterstaves and a bunch of flat dex, a bunch of attack speed, really nice. Grab a jewel socket there for critical strike chance and energy shield, jewel socket there, critical strike energy shield. Come over here for Falcon Technique for increased attack speed per dexterity and a bunch of dex and a bunch of attack speed. More dex, more dex, more dex. Percent dex over here, beautiful big node. We come on over here so you get critical strike damage from, Heartstopper with a little bit of int. We get some base crit there. We get some strength over there. We're coming down over here. We're going to grab a Timeless Jewel. We'll talk about it in a minute. Come back down over here to the Hunter's Charm to get +1 charm slot. Over here to get some more crit. Over here to get some more attack speed. Down here to get a bunch of attributes. And this is the whole tree. Now on the tree, you're going to notice two things. A jewel here that is unique and a jewel here that is unique. The first jewel that we're talking about right here grants us increased strength and increased dex. These against the darkness jewels drop out of Sanctum. They are not easy to find. They are actually very difficult to find. They cannot be searched up very well. In fact, when you search for them, you can't actually search for the percent strength. If I were to do this and I were to hit percent strength and I were to search for it, it won't work. So to search for against the darkness jewels, what you have to do is, if you're looking for one, is you have to set the buyout price to divines, put in a value, and then go through every single listing until you find one that you like. If you're looking for one very similar to mine, they start about 7 divs. If you're looking for int dex or int strength, they start about 40 divs. Small heads up. Mine was about 7. But they are a bit of a pain to search for, but they are indeed searchable. You just have to spend some time searching for it. One last thing to note about the Against the Darkness jewels, it says notable passives also grant. So that's this one, this one, this one, and this one when you level up. So that's why we put it here, because we gain 4 notables. Now moving along, we have a Heroic Tragedy Timeless Jewel. This is the exact same thing. If I were to go on trade and hit search, there are 61 results. And you literally can't search them any other way other than scrolling through all of them and just hoping to find the one that you need. These jewels do a couple of things. First and foremost, it says Remembrance Number Songworthy. What that means is that number is a seed. That seed will alter these nodes here. So if I were to take this out and show this to you, this is a 30% block chance node, and now it becomes a 10% increased charm effect node. These jewels have a number range of 100 to 3 or to 8,000. Every single number has a different set of skills that this jewel will alter. So we don't know the number that we would want. So we put it in a place where it doesn't alter anything. So we put it here. If I were to take this jewel and I were to put it up here and sock it here instead, it would change these jewels to give me shock chance and totem life. Very unfortunate. If I do ever figure out what jewels do what numbers, and I do ever get my hands on other Verana ones, I can actually mess around with these in different locations and see what they do. They are very powerful jewels, and it took a long time in Path of Exile 1 for the code to be cracked on them so that we knew what they all did. What you had to do in the old days was buy one with a random number and hope it didn't break your tree. In our case, so that we avoid breaking our tree, we're not going to worry about the random number, and we're going to worry about one specific line of text. We are only going to worry about the line of text that says Verana, Vorana. That is the only thing that we're worried about. It is the only line of text that is relevant. It does not really do anything on any other parts of our tree. We lose it with stats here, which is fine. But all this does is it alters this node here to give me strength inheritance bonus is 1% increased energy shield per 2 strength. That means my 8,000 energy shield when I take this off is about 3,000 life. This jewel is expensive. It's like 25 divs, but it's 25 divs for like 3,000 life. And if you just get really lucky and it has some really cool altering nodes, you can mess around with it and put it in different places on your tree. Like the opportunity cost of like accidentally stumbling into a good seed is really, really, really high. So to reiterate, to swap to what I'm playing, you would ideally want this so that you don't die. You would ideally want this for a bunch of damage. You would want Ingenuity, Hand of Action and Wisdom, Pillar of the Cage God, and Rings with stats. After you get that all together, fill the rest of your holes of your gear with resistances and whatever else you need, and go start whacking off mobs and have a good time. Because as soon as you start swinging your cane, you're just gonna be whacking away and everything's gonna explode and feel really good. Come on over here, grab a map, allocate right up, hit it with a couple of things, and double, triple check one thing. You wanna make sure your maps don't have increased ailment threshold. This map has increased ailment threshold. This map is very difficult to run. We're actually not going to run those maps. Those maps are pretty much bricks for our build. It's like the only map mod that we really don't want to run. Everything else is pretty much good to go. Exalt this map all the way up. Valid to try to get a little bit of extra. We see it downgrades. We're really sad. Grab another map. Valorb the next map. Allocate all the way up. Make sure it doesn't have ailment threshold. Hit over the corruption. Watch it go down. Grab another map. Regal Orb another map. Exalt another map. Hit it with a Valorb. Make sure it doesn't break and nothing bad goes on. And now we are good to run a map. I would normally just run these maps, but I know if I run those maps, I'm going to get somebody in the comment sections to be like, oh my God, he didn't do a tier 15 map. Can you believe this guy? He didn't do a tier 15 map? Bro, my guy didn't do a tier 15 map, bro. So we're going to do a tier 15 map. It's going to be scaled up due to the modifiers on this map. We see it's a nice little I-80 map. And we're going to hop right into it and just see how it goes. Right away, you see, we are able to clear all the maps, no problem. All the mobs just immediately die. We get a whole bunch of free loot, and we're just kind of like off to the races. Ideally, what you could just do is you could just hold Tempest Flurry and just kind of like move all over the map. But there's so many random little things that just kind of get you stuck that I just kind of prefer moving myself so that I don't get stuck everywhere. But the map in itself, really, really, really easy. We saw we did a boss earlier, also relatively easy, not a problem at all. And everything was pretty much smooth sailing. The only thing that we didn't do in this map is we didn't just do our meditate tech. We didn't overflow our life. We could swap really quick, overflow our life with the meditate tech. And if you don't know about the meditate tech, I actually have a whole video talking about the meditate tech that you can find. There's a video of it right there, and you can click on it in the description down below. Come on over this way. Let's find the breach. See how the breach looks. Come on over this way. Clear out all the mobs. We have beautiful, beautiful distance on our attack, so we can hit from super far away. We don't have anything at all to worry about, and we are able to just cruise through this map without any problems at all. Nice, looking good, looking good. Eventually, we're gonna find the breach. You see my mana's going down. I press my mana flask. Not really a problem at all. If your mana does become an issue and you have a bunch of money to spend and you're burning a hole in your pocket, you can do two things. One, you can get a mana on kill jewel. That'll fix a lot of your mana. You can use mana remnants like I'm using to map with. And three, you can buy the unique flask from Simulacrum and the unique class will solve a lot of your issues. Okay. Now we're just gonna find the breach really quick, clear out the breach, and then we'll be on our way. Make sure we move over all the hands. Beautiful, beautiful explosions, nothing to worry about. Refresh our buffs. Follow the big circle all the way around. Everything is dying immediately. Yeah, I'm almost fully convinced this gets nerfed in some way, shape, or form. But until it does, I'm just gonna play it. It's so fun, man. It's insanely fun. I love Monk. I really do. The only other class that I'm super excited for, like Monk, is gonna be Huntress, so I can't wait. Then we just clear all this out. Press our mana flask every so often so that we have a bunch of mana. Overcap our mana thanks to mana remnants. Blink all around, make sure we get all the mobs. And that should be it. That's the whole map. There you go. Grab our loot and we are off to the races. Now, if you do decide to play this and you have some questions, feel free to come by the Discord and ask. The Discord has been insanely active with people. A bunch of you guys have been stopping by. A bunch of you guys have been hanging out, chilling, and chatting. We made a whole section for people to post about where they're having problems. The whole community has been coming together and helping each other out. The community even here has been just super awesome and just like talking to each other. So if you're looking for a really cool community to hang out with or people that are like-minded and you want to play, feel free to stop by the Discord. There is a link down below in the bio. You can also come by the live stream. I'm live usually almost every single day in the morning at like 9:30, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And you can just come hang out, ask a million questions, and, you know, go from there. For now, friends, though, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found this video useful. If you decide to try Stat Stacker and it works and you like it, or you have really cool tech that you want to share, please let me know. I'm always up to hearing about really, really cool tech. It would be awesome. But for now, friends, I'm going to get this video out to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.